Hey, what's up? And welcome to Q&A, the show where I take your questions from YouTube, Twitter, and answer them here in video format. If you want to make sure your questions get answered on the show, please make sure, double check that you are subscribed. Hit that notification bell so you can be notified when I do the community prompt for questions. Also, make sure you're following me on Twitter so you can be notified when I do the question prompt there. That being said, let's get into the questions. First one is from Ryan. Ryan says, "Hey Q, just wondering what you think about alternating Watson and Brissette in different situations like 3rd and 1 and 4th-and-1. Brissette might be a better option to sneak it. Watson could run a draw." I felt like that's what they did on Sunday. When they did end up in a 4th-and-1 situation, they did put Brissette out there. I don't see any reason, as long as Brissett's still on the roster, for that not to continue. So yeah, I think that's definitely an option for them going forward. And I think that's something that they can use because Brissett's not just good at it; he's really, really good at that kind of 4th-and-1 sneak stuff because he just figured it out for whatever reason. He's just got a talent for it. Next question comes from Fluke, who says, "Hey Q, love your videos. Keep up the amazing work. I know you said there isn't a lot to take away from the Texans game, but do you think that since our defense has played well versus the Bengals, Deshaun will play decent enough to win?" Here's where I'm at with that game. The Texans were so bad that it's just not reasonable for me to sit here and sell you that what we saw from the Texans is going to carry over to any other game. What I can say is that the Browns do match up well with the Cincinnati Bengals. Historically, they have matched up well. Every time they have played them, they have matched up well. I think they have played Joe Burrow 4 times, including this year. I know they played him once his rookie year, once last year. So it might be 3 or 4 times. Enough to have a decent sample of what bucks them, right? And it's not like Joe Burrow has always played bad games versus the Browns. It's just some things happen in those games because of bad matchups, right? The guys who play bad are like Jonah Williams in those games, right? And the Browns do match up well with them. That being said, the Bengals are playing really well, pretty good football. And the Browns have been playing pretty football, but not what I would characterize as good or great football. So we'll see. I don't know what to expect from Deshaun Watson the next game because he could be rusty, he could not, right? Maybe this game was all he needed. And then a game of work is a lot of work. So maybe that's just what he needed and he'll be better next week. Maybe he needs a couple more weeks. We're just going to have to play this one by ear when it comes to Deshaun. But yeah, that's really all I could take away from it. Defensively, I can't really take away much from what you do here. And then historically, what I have learned is you can't really take much from what you do in Cincinnati, especially if it's in a positive direction, because we've had great performances in Cincinnati and then have proceeded to follow those with terrible performances for the rest of the year. So again, there's not a lot definitive I could say about the defense. And honestly, most of the definitive stuff I could say about the defense is in the negative direction because that's what they have shown most often. The next question comes from Greg, who says, "Hey Q, do you think anything we saw from the field with Watson was a concern long term? To me, it looked like athleticism and physical traits were still there. I still feel like he will get back to being Deshaun at some point, just not sure how long that may take." Yeah, that's about where I'm at. I honestly felt like since he did not play in 700 days, and since he himself said it, the word we're going to use is rusty. And to a point, I think that's true. It also, to me, just looked like a quarterback in a new system for the first time, right? Like some of the stuff looked like rust, the false start, the low balls that he was throwing on the run. Like that definitely looked like rust. But other stuff, like the interception and some of the 3rd down plays, looked like a quarterback on a new team. So, you're going to mix and match some of these elements in there. Nothing looked like the Russell problem that people are going to compare this to, right? The Russell Wilson problem. It's not like it looks like his ball has lost zip. That zip still looks like it's there. It's not like it looks like he has lost the step athletically. If those two things were happening, I would be much more concerned. But athletically, he looked like he was there. pocket awareness, he looked like he was there. His weird ability to just stay parallel, for whatever reason, was there when he shook out that sack. And his ability to find guys on the field, right? When we talk about, like, since he hasn't played in a while, I have to use a college comp to tell you kind of what his style is, because you guys have watched more college football recently than you have watched Deshaun Watson play at an extended clip. But when you watch Bryce Young play football, and he has that crazy ability to just find people on the field whenever he scrambles around, Deshaun is like that very much. That's the same type of player Deshaun Watson was in college and in the NFL. And he still had that, right? Like, that was there, right? When he was scrambling around and finding guys, sometimes guys weren't catching it because they weren't ready for it. And I think that's also another factor that goes into this, is that the team is not used to Deshaun Watson, because with Deshaun Watson out there, the ball can come to you much later. Or the ball can come to you on a play that normally would be dead with Jacoby Brissett. Or you got to hang in that play a little bit longer when it's Deshaun, because Deshaun's going to find you, right? You got to get used to that. And you got to expect it. And I don't think guys were expecting it. And I think guys are just kind of like, okay, yeah, the play's dead. And then the ball hit them and like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, they weren't expecting him to extend the play. So there is that. But what I did see that I liked was that the athleticism did not look like it lost a step again. The physical traits did not look like they had diminished. He still, when he was unpressured, he was still very accurate with the football. It seemed like his accuracy only diminished when he was on the run. And it's not like he got good feet off and was throwing the ball, and it spiked. It just looked like, hey, he had sloppy footwork because he just had it because he wasn't used to being pressured, right? So whenever he had a good situation, he didn't look bad athletically, physically. And then his ability to find guys on the field and have the number of guys on the field not overwhelm him, his field sense was still there, right? It wasn't like he couldn't find anybody. So I don't have much long-term concern with him. Short-term wise, when you're talking about winning these next 6 games, a little bit more concerned than I entered week 13 with. But long-term, I think he's still the same player. And he could be that same player probably as soon as next week, but maybe it takes a little bit longer. That's the part that we're trying to figure out right now. The next question from John is, Quincy, what is your opinion of Kevin Stefanski not giving Deshaun a lot of opportunity to throw the ball and push it downfield against the Texans? It seemed like he didn't trust them. I don't think it's that. I think Kevin Stefanski realized what at least I realized, was that the second the Browns had 3 turnovers in the first half and then ended the first half with a 2-point lead, just win the game, right? Like, just win the game at that point, because you have, quite frankly, this year fumbled enough victories. And sure, would it have been nice to give Deshaun a lot of work pushing the ball downfield? Yeah, but like, it also would be nice to win the game. And it would be nicer to win the game. And I think a lot of that was Kevin calling the game that he's like, all right, we're going to win this one. Even, like, I don't think, if the Browns don't go up by like 20 points, I think if that score stays at 7-5 the whole game, it would have ended at 7-5. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think the Texans had a chance to win that game once the Browns were up. And I think Kevin realized that. And when you're in that situation, you just got to make sure you don't do dumb shit. And a good way to avoid doing dumb shit, especially with a rusty quarterback, is not calling anything that's risky, right? So he just ran the ball a lot. And I think we kind of expected this kind of a game plan in somebody's first game, and it kind of looked like what they were trying to call in Carolina when Jacoby was back there for his first game. When you're in a situation where you clearly should win, the team you're playing is imploding on themselves. Sometimes you just got to take a step back and let them implode. Like, you don't got to throw more gas on the fire. Why try to burn down a building that's already coming down? You know what I mean? Like, you don't got to press the fire on the gas on that one. And I think that's what he was thinking, because let's be real here. The Texans were imploding in that game, and sometimes you just got to let them fall. JPEG Tyler says, is Schwartz fumble the final nail in the coffin? I think if it costs him the game, maybe, but I think they still going to go with him because he's the only guy who can make the defense respect the deep ball with his speed alone. Without having to sacrifice Amari Cooper as a decoy. And I think just having Schwartz out there still has more benefits in the coaching staff's mind than negatives. JX Knife says, what's been up with Gentric Will? He looked terrible this week. I didn't think he looked terrible. I felt like he looked pretty. Like, I felt like the whole offensive line, quite frankly, except for Joe Bitonio, looked mediocre. Like the center, Yodi Freehold, he's been pretty bad the last few weeks. Wyatt Teller's been bad for about a month, and I think Jack Conklin's not. I think he's been a bit disappointing the last year and a half, especially when you look at his injury history. Jed, I don't think Jed played the worst out of that group. I felt like he was probably second to Joel. Some of his mistakes are going to be highlighted because he plays left tackle and because for whatever reason people have a vendetta against this man. But I mean, if you look at the offensive line tape, it has not been shining for the right tackle, the right guard, or the center. It's been a mess for whatever reason. And I think also Watson being new in there, he has a different drop depth than Jacoby Brissett. They're going to have to get used to that. So this week's going to give this team a lot of useful intel to adjust to, and hopefully that pays off against Cincinnati. The next question comes from Buckets, who says, hey, Q, do you think there will be a bigger area of emphasis on the offensive line or defensive line? I know both lines have battled injury. Additionally, do you think some of the major flaws are covered up by top-tier players on each side? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the NFL, though, right? That's why you sign these guys to big contracts, is because they can cover up some flaws. That being said, they should have a better emphasis on the defensive line because we have seen what that can look like. And also, you always got to do maintenance on the offensive line, right? The offensive line is the engine of the offense, and you got to get your oil changed, right? Same concept with the offensive line. You got to make sure you're continuously getting new guys in, so you're not having big gaping holes in your offensive line. And the same idea should be there with the defense, but not a lot of people do that. But that's going to be it for this week's Q&A. I want to thank you guys for asking these questions. You guys have a great day. Have an even better night.